3 women from Merseyside arrive at Baghdad airport. While America threatens to send more troops to the Gulf to confront Iraq, and the world still seems poised on the brink of war, these women embarked on an extraordinary and controversial mission to the heart of the crisis. They're the first women to go to meet their husbands, or among the 1,400 men kept hostage by Saddam Hussein.
Will you go away with that camera?
Tonight's World in Action follows them to Baghdad. Coping with the situation in which they feel they're pawns, they go directly to the Iraqi government to ask for their husband's release. Liverpool Council's Housing Department. Angela Forshaw works here as an area manager. The last time she saw her husband was when she put him on a plane to Baghdad in July.
OK, thanks very much. Bye. Well, he went because work's tight in Liverpool. You can't really get much work in Liverpool. He's always worked around the country. But this is the first time he's worked abroad. It was offered to him and it was a chance that he had to take. And it was only for a period of 6 weeks.
Christopher and Simon Felwell's dad went out on the same job with a company of painters and decorators.
Baby doesn't know his dad because he was only 3 months old when his dad went and he's now 8 months old. And it's a big chunk out of his life, isn't it?
Joan Concepcion leaves the newsagent where she works and contemplates her husband's fate. He went out on the same contract to decorate Saddam Hussein's palace.
Well, I didn't really want him to go because I don't like him being away from home. And out in the Middle East, you don't know whether there's ever any trouble. But the Foreign Office seemed to think that it was a very stable situation out there when he went. So we agreed for him to go and do it.
Just weeks after the men arrived, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and the women had to face up to the fact that their husbands were at the very centre of a conflict which could escalate to war.
Life for the Brits here now is tough, and I think it's going to get tougher.
Oh, it's just been awful. I don't think I could have felt any worse if, he had died. It's been really, really bad not knowing when he would be home or if he would be coming home.
Absolutely horrified. I just couldn't believe that it could be happening to us. You see other people getting caught up in situations like this, but you just don't dream that it could ever happen to yourself, especially when you're not a political person and your husband's just a painter and decorator. It's always journalists or diplomats or scientists people that are taken. You just don't believe that anyone could hold a group of painters and decorators.
How did you deal with that stress in the first few weeks?
Well, I didn't really deal very well with it at the beginning. Couldn't stop crying. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep.
The abilities of us getting these men home.
You have to be realistic, I'm afraid, and say that the chances are very small. But I imagine that you would feel that if there's any chance at all, you'd feel it's worth a go, wouldn't you?
Well, we'd always be worried that if we didn't take the chance.
Right.
Who
you wouldn't like to look back and feel you didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's the only way to look at it.
So it is worth a go?
I don't see you've anything to lose by going, and there's the outside chance you might win something.
Three days later, they arrived in Baghdad, accompanied by World in Action, who paid their fares.
And now that we're actually here, it seems quite unbelievable and quite amazing that we have actually got this far, because we never really thought we could. And I don't feel as nervous as what I thought I would. Just quite excited, really.
I think we feel quite calm about it because it was such a big thing at first that we didn't ever imagine that we would be here. Now that we're here, we're going to do our utmost to try and do something to bring them home.
Their first priority is to meet their husbands, who are detained in a hotel in Baghdad. Their contract finished 6 weeks ago, but they've continued working at the presidential palace for no pay. They haven't seen their wives for months.
Oh, here we go.
Yes!
Hello.
Great. I can't believe this.
Hello. Oh. You're not going to start crying on me, are you? No. Over the moon.
Jimmy, what's it been like waiting for?
It's been terrible, but it's definitely the best day I've had for 3 months, I think. I made up, great.
It's just been murder. You know, I only come over here for 5 weeks and 14 and a half now, so you can imagine how I feel. I feel better now, though.
It's good to know that someone is doing something for us, and the government's not doing nothing for us at the moment. Just the families are doing something, you know. It feels that we are wanted at home by someone, you know.
Next morning, they set out for their first appointment. They have to meet the Minister of Information. He has no direct control over hostage policy, but he can open the way for them to meet other people. They hear the standard Iraqi line on the hostages, who they insist on calling guests.
You are welcome here in Baghdad, and we hope that all the guests will leave Baghdad as soon as possible. And when we have any sign from Bush that he will not attack our country, all the guests will leave as soon as possible, as you know.
Yes, but can you tell me, do you feel...
One of them had very chubby cheeks.
On the television news, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has announced the release of all the French hostages. The Portuguese will leave the next day. That evening, Jackie, Angela and Joan visit the group of men detained with their husbands. Many are fearful to criticise either the British Embassy or the Iraqi government, lest there are repercussions. The atmosphere is very depressing.
That's all I can say, settle.
One man has just learned his mother has died. The group have heard that Edward Heath has secured the release of the elderly and sick, but contrary to press reports, there's no confirmed news on the situation for contract workers. The next day, the women are granted an audience with the number 3 man at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who handles the policy on hostages.
So I'm glad that you were able to visit us here, and we'll welcome all the other British people who like to visit, whether they were families of our guests.
Our husbands aren't diplomats, they're not politicians. They're here, they paint President Saddam Hussein's palace, and their jobs are finished, and we would just like them to come home with us.
The meeting goes well, and the minister takes the names of the men and promises to review their case.
We really hope that the stay of the foreigners that have been prevented from traveling will be here as short as possible, and we'll try to do our best.
The women travel back to England. Despite the pain of separation, they're proud of their achievements.
Yes, I'm very pleased I did it. I don't think I should have had to do it, but I'm very pleased that I did.
Well, we're hopeful that they will get out, because we have been given some assurances that the visas will be processed and the applications. And we're just in their hands, aren't we, really? And we're just hoping that, you know, it will go ahead and they will do what they promised for us.
But that's 2 or 3 weeks. What happens? The military build-up is still going on in the Gulf. What happens if war breaks out in the meantime?
The men and their 22 colleagues wait to hear confirmation of their exit visas, and the European community takes a harder line on independent initiatives to release hostages. The women, in common with all families whose men remain in the Gulf, are left waiting and hoping.